Quick side note before we begin, just because I'm in the hangar about to talk to Saint and figure out what he's got going on, I'm curious why they've left all the faction stuff as they were. Because I don't know if you keep track of it, but for a long time, factions were nevertheless irrelevant since Season 3, and then factions kind of made a brief story reappearance during Season of the Splicer during Season 14, which after that, factions left the city entirely. So honestly, I'm surprised they haven't repurposed sections of the tower yet, just because, there's a lot of floor space here. You can definitely make use of it. But aside from that, welcome to Friday and the Friday Reset, covering both Trials and Xur. So, when you visit Saint, I will also reiterate this. The current Adept available is a Burden of Guilt, Stasis, Adaptive Frame, Fusion Rifle, available from Trials, and of course the Adept version meaning you can get the Adept mods and everything, as well as a Masterwork that buffs every single stat. But I will also warn you, at least as I understand them, both Forgiveness and Burden of Guilt will be rotated out with the rotation, leaving Whistler's Whim and the Inquisitor from Season of the Splicer, Exalt the Truth and Unwavering Duty from Season of the Seraph. I believe we're also getting Astral Horizon and another new Trials thing returning. I forget exactly, but I believe at least currently Burden of Guilt and Forgiveness are on the chopping block and will not be back until at least a few seasons. So, warning for that. But as well with Burden of Guilt, it is that. Now, my hypothesis earlier this week was because all boosters were active, Trials booster would be active as well. It appears only increased Crucible rank as well as Trials, and there isn't any alternate modes. It's just straight up normal Trials of Osiris, in case you were at all curious. Now, time to go find Xur and see what he's got for us. Alrighty, visiting our exotic merchant man. So, on the front page, we have his usual purchasable engram. Lord of Wolves, a exotic shotgun, mainly a Crucible-based one. Basically, it's a burst fire slug shotgun, to put it blankly. Because it is a shotgun, but it fires a burst of single rounds. Solar, of course, and you also have the Release of Wolves perk, which if you hold X or swap modes, it increases your rate of fire and will shoot in full auto. And then the Catalyst basically gives you buffs based on what mode you're in. Decent for Crucible, at least when I used to use it in Crucible on occasion, it was decent. Then for Hunters, we have a pretty decent pair of Lucky Pants, which if you don't know what these do, basically it's a lot of hand cannon buffs from damage for kinetic or any weapon matching your subclass, as well as handling boosts and auto reloaders, that sort of thing. Now, this roll is actually pretty solid because it is a very high resilience roll with lower mobility, which personally, I prefer that. I know a lot of, for Hunters, that's a ring sort of thing, but I want as little mobility as possible, so there's that. Then for Tides, we have Antaeus Wards, which is another Crucible-based one. Basically, sliding will reflect projectiles, and I think he used to also buff, what's it called? Used to buff, or give you super energy based on that, but I think they killed that. This roll is not half bad, a little high recovery, a little broad specking as well, but at the same time, higher mobility, and I prefer 0 if I could. And we also have Xur and Saint, which, oh, hello. So if you wanted a Warlock-based roll, Intellect and Recovery, if you wanted a good Nova Bomb or just Void Super thing, I would go with this one. A very high spike in Recovery and Intellect. Wow. And if you didn't know how Xur and Saint works, basically, Void kills granted an ability recharge increase, and at the same time, it's not just abilities, it's literally any form of Void. So if you just want to use a bunch of Void weapons, and I think this also works on not Void subclasses, so if you just killed with a Void weapon on a different subclass, I think that works. I forget if they patched that, though. So definitely recommend all of those exotics if you, recommend some. Definitely get the Xur, though. Then in terms of our, well, hang on, exotic weapons, we have the Hawkmoon, a quick draw roll, a Hammerforged rifling, smooth grip. I would definitely say that's also a Crucible roll for a little bit of range and draw time. And the Dead Man's Tail, handling, I don't know about this one. Killing Wind is okay, but in terms of DMT, it's not great. But, soon to be said, Seraph codes out of nowhere. Now, in terms of our legendary weapons, we have the Seraph's 7th Seraph Carbine, which this is the old version. Would not recommend picking this one up at all. I know some people like the old perk rolls that might go for it, but this is literally the old version of a gun we have currently. So, don't grab that, Bungie, what the hell. Then we also have GN7, a rifle from Season of the Worthy as well. While this one might not be that half bad, it's of course one lost to time, so, no origin perk, and there are other adaptive frames you can get them. Now, also, Bungie, what the hell? If you updated the Ikelos to be the current version, why not the Seraph... come on. I might need to make a separate video about this. But aside from that, this Ikelos SMG... it definitely seems like a Crucible-style thing. Tap the trigger for, well, extended mags and all that. But at the same time, this one is craftable and is current, still accessible. I'm pretty sure the... wait. Well, no, this one will probably be going away for a time. But, just craft it. Just do it. Then we also have First and Last Out, a pretty solid shotgun, slug frame, of course. No Suros origin perk, unfortunately. And while it used to be the king of DPS with slugs, this is definitely not that role. We also have Far Future from Season of the Chosen with a role that is a not so standard role, an adaptive frame with a stat boost as well as a damage boost, but at the same time, no origin perk there still. We also have Honor's Edge from Season of the Worthy, a new Monarchy Sword from way back when. Pretty decent perks all around. Jagged Edge, Swordmaster's Guard for the recharge, Relentless Strikes, and Surrounded for damage. At the same time, it's a pretty old sword, so I'm not sure how much I would recommend it. And I also believe it is all the class-specific swords. I can't say specifically. Well, I can actually forgot them. I'm going to be checking on all classes. So, while the Titan one isn't that great, there is hope for the other classes. Now, speaking of other classes as well, for our armor, we have the Vigil Heroes set from Season of Arrivals, which is, if I recall, a old Vanguard set from like year 1 something. But regardless, we have a 64 roll, higher resilience and discipline, low intellect, moderate spikes everywhere else. And we also have a high resilience roll and also next highest strength, low recovery. So that one's actually not half bad of a chest plate as well. 66 roll is pretty decent. For a helmet, we have a 60 roll, high resilience, higher discipline and strength as well, but low everything else, moderate mobility, and a pretty broad spectrum of the boots, and higher resilience and higher strength, but broad everywhere else. Time to see where else we got some stuff. Alrighty, now for the hunters, of course, checking the quick thing. Also, not a great roll. Well, there's no Jagged Edge. It does have the Swordmaster's Guard as usual. On Guard is not half bad, but then Thresh is always at a low point. If anything has Thresh, literally get rid of it. Then, as well, for the armor, we have a high spiked mobility and intellect roll. 63, though. Not half bad if you're looking for some build stuff, but I would also recommend other... Ooh! I'm also liking this. A 66 roll on the chestplate again. The high resilience, moderate spikes everywhere else. And since this is Hunter, mobility isn't that half bad, so I honestly might recommend picking that one up. Unless you're looking for a recovery-based thing. But, you know. Then, a moderate distribution 58 stat with very low discipline, though. So I wouldn't go for that. And honestly, anything below 63, I might say ignore. And also a 61 roll, low recovery, moderately high spikes everywhere else. So, you know, there's that. Now checking our Warlock for the last bit. Alright, lastly with the dress-wearing floaty boy. Now, of course, we also have Infinity's Edge, if I recall. Or Infinity's Edge, that's what it is. Now, Relentless Strikes. Flash Canner, though. Also, none of the good blades. But all their distinctive I might say if you're actually looking for any of the class swords, none of these are the greatest. But lastly, so we have a low discipline 63 roll with a high set of intellect for a pair of gloves and another weirdly high spiked roll. So honestly though, I would ignore this because its highest spike is mobility and flat everywhere else that kind of matters. Then lastly we have another 58 roll with high strength but low discipline for warlocks. That's not exactly great. And ooh, hello there. High mobility, low recovery, but high resilience 66 rolls on boots. So honestly, if you need a tanky pair of boots, this is something good. Moderate everything else, although, you know, warlocks kind of need recovery for, you know, their rifts. Aside from that, that is everything that Xur has, everything Trials has, and this is the last week before Lightfall. So if there's any sort of exotics that you need, I would recommend doing the Cypher and definitely buying the Shards one if somehow anything in the past year that you need that is a natural drop but hasn't dropped on you, I'd recommend doing that. In case you don't know, the Cypher is purchasable in the second page at Xur. My name is Matt Scorpion. I'll see you in the next video.